He's also been threatened by a Las Vegas bench officer with a bench warrant in order to gain compliance for that court's orders previously. He's been subject of a default judgment for failing to appear, I believe, just last week in a civil lawsuit. He's been subject to numerous liens, evictions, and lawsuits due to his inability to take responsibilities for his actions. And the people feel this all reflects on his willingness and his ability to abide by this court's order to show up to court. In light of that, the people ask this court to impose bail in the amount of $300,000, a reasonable and appropriate bail given the circumstances. The people ask that he be remanded into custody and booked and processed on that bail. The people further ask that he surrender his passport and ask the court to impose appropriate travel restrictions should he be released. Thank you, Your Honor.
Judge, very briefly, Mr. Walgren states in his declaration that the main reason he wants you to deviate is because the doctor has a irresponsible and financially unstable life. In effect, he doesn't have any money. You know, he has a right to bail, and he has a right to reasonable bail. If that were a reason to deviate from bail, then anybody who had financial troubles then would have a higher bail amount. I think that in this particular case, these reasons surely these reasons are not sufficient to have you deviate from the bail amount. I ask you to not do that.
Well, what about the aspect that he doesn't live in California? Don't you think that's a factor the court can consider? In other words, his primary residence is out of the state.
Well, yes, but keep in mind, Judge, that he doesn't live in California, but he's been here for the last week to surrender himself. He showed up in court today after receiving notice to show up. He's obviously capable of coming to court in California. He showed a willingness to do that. So yes, if I can understand why you would consider that as part of your decision, but in this particular case, the doctor not only has a residence in California, but has traveled specifically for this court case. And keep in mind, Judge, as well, we're perfectly willing to waive any extradition in this case.
Well, let's just say this. Is there anything else that people want to add?
No, I don't. Just briefly, Your Honor, the people did not say he didn't have financial means. The people said he's financially irresponsible and he doesn't live up to his financial obligations. The people feel that is an appropriate factor to consider and to determine how he values his obligations and how he would value his obligations to this court to show up.
Anything else, please?
No, Judge.
Submitted?
Submitted, Your Honor.
Well, I guess it's nice for everybody that they left it in the judge's hands to make this decision. And one of the things that I think is important about judges in general is that they're consistent, okay? And I think attorneys need to feel that they can trust judges that are consistent. In other words, they know generally where the judge is coming from and they're not going to be blindsided and, you know, off the wall kind of stuff. And I try to do that in each of the cases when I set bails. So I set a lot of bails every day, and I try to keep that in mind, that somebody's liberty is being taken away. And to make sure that people understand where I'm coming from, 99% of the time I follow the bail schedule. And one of the public defenders that is assigned to my court, Ms. Brewer, standing over here, is that accurate, Ms. Brewer? Yes. Because I don't want to be accused by either side of suggesting, well, because in this case and this person you're raising bail or whatever. I usually follow the bail schedule. That's voted on by the judges, and that determines what the judges of the Superior Court in Los Angeles County believe appropriate bails for certain crimes should be. So that is my starting point. Now, obviously, every case turns on its unique facts, and I have to look at the nature of the charges. I have to look at the criminal record, which in this case, Dr. Murray has no prior criminal record. I have to look at other factors, where's their primary residence, some of the things that the DA mentioned in their moving papers. So you look at all of those factors before you determine what an appropriate bail is. Now, in this particular case, with all due respect to the government, I would say this. I think $300,000 would be too high in this particular case given what the bail schedule is. However, I think the district attorney has in their moving papers mentioned a factor or additional factors that are reasonable for me to consider. The primary factor, well, there's a couple of factors. One is the defendant does not reside in the state of California. That's a legitimate, recognized factor for the court to consider. One of the things counsel said, that Dr. Murray would waive extradition. Well, it's unlikely. You know, people can't disappear off the face of the earth. You know, in a global technology like this, people can be found at some point. The point is, and I'm not concerned that Dr. Murray, there's nothing I've known or been shown here, you know, is going to seek to disappear. But again, that is a legitimate factor that the DA's raised. Having family outside the United States, I mean, you know, people have family outside the United States. It's not unreasonable to visit them, so I don't know that that's a specific factor. The other factors here that the DA mentioned about not paying child support, I guess that in a sense you can believe that that's, you know, violating a court order if that's what the judge ordered you to pay. But again, that's a family law setting, and there's different rules and different requirements or standards there. In other words, if you know, I don't know, you know, if somebody doesn't have the ability to pay, and if they're unable to pay because of that, it's not that they're willfully not doing it. You know, that's a factor, and I don't have the facts underlying those cases to say whether that's a willful disobedience of a court order in the sense of what the government's suggesting. Hey, if he's told to come back, he's not going to come back. So the main thing for me is the nature of the offense in this case, which is very significant, and also that he has a primary residence out of the state of California. So having said that, Dr. Murray is going to be remanded into the custody of the Sheriff's Department, and bail in this particular case is going to be set at $75,000. I think that's reasonable given all of the factors. It's 3 times the bail schedule. It's not as much as the government requested, but I think it's reasonable under the circumstances. Now, there's a few other issues that we've got to deal with. The DA's office asked for travel restrictions. Now, what exactly are you seeking there?